Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the new media show. A little late start for us this morning. Technical difficulties, but of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Good morning, Todd. So where do we begin?
Well, there's a bunch. I guess we'll get the big apple out of the way, but
Sure.
big announcement by IAB.
Right.
We knew this was coming. Yeah. Yeah, we knew this was coming. We've been hinting, and anyone that's been watching this show knew what we were talking about. They just really couldn't say it. So, yeah, the certification announcement's out. Or actually, the IAB certification to be in compliance with the podcast measurement guidelines.
That darn word compliance.
Yeah.
That's the key sticking point here.
Well,
right?
It's really not. They've had a compliance program, but
no, it's that word. It's the usage of that word that's in contention, right?
Everyone uses it, so I guess the key is we'll see if they steal our little compliance banner and put it on their website and say, "Hey, we're compliant too."
That's right.
But the certification is done for at least 4 others, including Spreaker Vox Nest is in the bullpen, right?
Yeah, we are working our way through it. As you know, it's definitely a prod. That's all I could say.
Oh yes, it is a prod, all right. And I liked Libsyn had posted something. As you know, Rob was nice when he said it took a couple of months. It took 5 months, but we were the guinea pigs too.
Yeah, you were. It shouldn't take that long for others.
I'm hoping. Yeah. Not to say that I hope it does.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
I need a little runway here.
That's right. That's right. You need a little bit of distance between first and second. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't help. I'm losing 2 weeks from the holidays. I'm like, crap. But it's okay. It's the response has been curious in that the reporters that I'm talking to, Wall Street Journal, talked to Adweek, a number of folks, they all wanted to know what this meant, what this does. And I went through the history of how we, where we started and where we've ended up, and I think that they are relatively positive about it. The news seemed to be relatively positive across the board, although we got a couple of things to talk about some. You and I both listened to a show where some people obviously yet do not get it, but that's a whole another topic. But I think that from our perspective, the response has been good. And not only that, we've had our partners have been they're getting ready to come out with their own announcements at the new year. It just was too close to the holidays. And then we've gotten response from some very, very, very big names in New York, not podcast related, but on the buy side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, everybody's asking for to work with a platform that's supportive of this. I think. I mean, that's the direction that I'm seeing every indication point to, is that this is going to be a significant improvement to the perception of the medium with the advertising buyers. Yeah.
So we're lining those meetings up, and I think we're going to be hot and heavy in their offices within like the 6th or 7th of January. So it's we're going to be turning and burning. I'm going to be in Vegas. I've got a point man that's going to be leading the charge in New York, and then I'm going to be joining him. So it's we've got a lot of ground, and well, not just New York. Every city, every city that has a media buyer. So it is, and we're just going to go in and explain this. That's the main thing. But I do want to say too is it's really not an olive branch because we're not at war with anybody. But I just want to extend an invitation to those companies that may not have a pathway to certification. I think Libsyn and what you guys are doing and the other players. That aside, we're in a unique position where our platform's really platform agnostic. So if someone's looking to get certified and wants to be certified, we can get them there. Networks too. So,
Right.
so it's gonna be an interesting time to watch.
Mm-hmm.
What was your perspective? Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think it's. I mean, of course, anybody that's been listening to this show over the last 6 months knows how significant this is to the overall kind of pathway and runway of the perception of this relatively new medium, and it's going to change how. It's going to change the relationships that we have with our content creators, and it's going to change the relationships that we have with the ad buying side. And I do also think that it's going to have the potential of, through building confidence, it's going to expand the confidence to lower levels of advertising buyers, not so much just the biggest agencies or the biggest brands. I think over time it's going to even extend down to smaller local companies. As the listener side of this medium grows, and larger numbers in local markets, it's going to bring an opportunity for local brands to get involved in this medium at a higher level, not unlike what radio has tapped into over the years. I think the opportunity with the dynamic ad insertion technology basically opens some doors. But as you know, Todd, and most people listening to this know, we've got a lot of work to do on that side. So anyway, I think it's the most significant thing that's happened to this medium. I don't know, since I can't even think of the last one that was more significant.
I also, the question I was asked numerous times during interviews was, what does this mean for business of people that are doing podcast advertising? And I was like, well, I said, there's going to be a few people that are going to have some pain points.
Right.
There's going to be some pain. And I said, but I tried to follow that up with, I'm like, okay, let's think about this scenario. I said, and I broke it down in, as layman terms as I could to the reporters, because not all of them are involved in ad buys. And I said, if you've been paying $10,000 for an ad campaign, and you've been overpaying for that ad campaign by $2,500, but yet you were still happy with the performance of the campaign, and we're renewing contracts and putting IOs in front of these same companies, I said that means that the space is worth at least 25% more.
Right.
So it should reason.
On an ROI, or return on investment.
Right. So I said it should reason that if CPMs were 20, CPM should go to 25, and media buyers are going to be getting the same results. So I said there should be no loss in revenue for the ROI for the advertisers, and there is going to be, it should be good for the podcasters. It should increase. Well, you'll be even money.
Right.
Now, she says, well, how does that affect your ad campaigns? I said it doesn't. I said we're on the same code essentially that we have been since 2013, with a few minor tweaks here and there. With it's just nothing major. It's been and I said there's no effect. I said our campaigns will continue to deliver consistently where they were at, and there is no adjustment. I said, but I can't say that's going to be the case for everyone.
Right.
Now, and I don't know. Did you read the report? If anyone hasn't read the report, I'll put NPR's report and our report in the show notes today. But it's not something you want to read while you're laying in bed, because it may put you to sleep. But did you read the actual? And it's an abridged. It's Reader's Digest version. They remove all the intellectual property from the report, because it has a lot. Those reports are much more detailed, but they have a lot of stuff in there that I don't want you or Podtrack or Libsyn to know, and likely when you get your report, you're not going to want us or want me to know some of the stuff that's in your report either.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing is walking a fine line, right, between kind of some proprietary stuff and stuff that we're all on the same page with.
Right.
I guess, yeah.
Proprietary. What I mean by that is we know a few things that can affect download numbers, and if someone hasn't put those, and I'll be honest, Angelo, if he had not, and I remember the conversation about 4 or 5 years ago. He said, "Do you think we should do this?" And I'm like, "Is it necessary?" And he said, "Well, maybe down the road." And I'm like, "Okay." That saved our butts for the redirect customers. If we hadn't implemented something, 5 years ago, we'd have been like, "Oh, the redirect customers aren't going to get certified." So,
hey Todd, I have a question for you that I was posed this question earlier this week by another platform, right, in the space. Do you know, can a platform be certified compliant if they are not an IAB member?
Don't know.
Offhand?
I don't know. No, I don't. Is there a pathway to that? I don't know. That's something to reach out to the IAB Tech Lab.
Right.
And ask if they can. I don't even want to consider what that check's going to be. It's going to be.
Well, I mean, you're still going to have to pay for the certification process.
Right. But I'm
just curious if you don't have to pay the IAB part of that every year in order to be certified.
If I was at IAB, I'd say you have to be part of the IAB to become compliant. If I was at IAB, that's what I would say. And then if not, they would probably write the cost up on the certification high enough that it would make sense to be an IAB member,
Okay.
So.
Sure. I just don't think that question has been addressed that I'm aware of.
I don't think so. But I know
that's come up here already.
Well, I know that IAB is reaching out to every company that is saying that they're compliant. And they're asking them to become certified. They're basically asking every one of those that they're putting compliant on their websites. Okay, you're saying you're compliant now. Let's go. So,
I mean, because I want everybody to be compliant.
I know.
I mean, honestly, I think that's what's best for the medium.
But Rob, I don't think. Okay. Maybe be gentle.
I know.
How many people you got working on this?
I don't. I'm not sure. I think it's a project off and on for a few of our developers, and other ones it's a regular thing. So it's not a huge amount.
Okay. So what do you think? How many total hours you think you've put in so far?
I couldn't even guess.
A couple hundred?
Honestly. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I would just be guessing if I
All right. So I'll say that we had 2 people on and off dedicated on this for a couple hundred hours. And it took,
makes sense.
Yeah. And we spent a week in the code, just a week in the code.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess maybe depending how robust your platform is, you may not need a week in the code. But, we spent a week line by line in the code. 40 hours. Well, not 40, maybe like 4 or 5 hour sessions. So still a significant investment in time, number one.
Right.
And number two, this is, I think we get to do it. The first round, I think we're good for two years. I'm not even sure if we could have to do this again next year. But I'm sure year 2 won't be as invasive. But here's the challenge that you're going to have is it's not only just the writing the check, which is significant, which I think, and this is why I said I extended this olive branch or this invitation. We know that some companies will not have no way to do this, just no way.
Right.
And some networks, maybe they need to look at where they're at. And again, platform agnostic, you don't have to change where you're hosting at. large part. Now, Anchor folks, you guys are screwed. They've got their own thing. You're going to have to ask Anchor to support third-party stats. But everywhere else, I think we can integrate with. But I know what the check was, and I got a discount because I was first. So ouch.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I want everybody to be on board with this because if there's companies out there that aren't, then that just creates confusion in the ad market.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to avoid by this whole thing. I mean, that's the goal of this whole thing, is to get everybody on the same page so we can all compete on content, not on, stats,
mm-hmm.
right? Let's take the stats off the table as a differentiator around business models.
Right.
Because that's kind of what's been going on.
So, I think here is something to think about too, is that I'm awful hot today. I'm sorry if I'm blowing everyone out. Lost my train of thought. Oh, so the follow-up questions I was asked is the RAD component came up.
Yeah.
You got a cell phone near your mic?
Okay.
It's
better. Further away now.
Okay. So the question we got, well, we see you guys signed off on RAD. So when are you guys going to be ready? I said, being ready to ingest RAD data is very simple. I said, this is just a matter of putting a little programmer time to it and being ready to take the data. I said, but there's no data to be ingested. And I get this silence on the other end. What do you mean? I'm like, well, the only app that has RAD in it is the NPR One app. Silence on the other end. What do you mean? I'm like, it means that all these other app developers are not supporting it yet. Right. And in Overcast and in NPR's own app, Pocket Cast, I noticed there was an article out on that where the NPR folks hedged a little bit.
Right.
And said, well, it might be coming. Well, the podcast team has said, no, it's not. So I said, and I explained to her, if Apple and Google doesn't get on board, and we've had this conversation on the show already, but I'm trying to explain this to the reporter, and they're like, she says, so this is...
now they're getting it.
She goes, right. So this client side stuff is a lot of nothing. And I said, you said it, not me.
Right.
And I said, we're ready to support it when there's data, but there's no data. And NPR One app is very limited on the number of shows that are on it.
And it's mainly NPR shows.
Right. And this is an NPR initiative. And then, again, we'll support RAD. We'll take the data. Okay. But who's going to be the first app developer to say I'm implementing it, and then what kind of blowback are they going to get?
Yeah, I know that it was a little bit of a discussion point around RAD and privacy. It kind of came up.
Some people think there's no issue. I'm not convinced.
Right. I mean, this really puts the ball in National Public Radio's court to prove that it is not a violation. I believe if they're going to take the leadership position,
it's not necessarily a violation. You just have to.
Well, I mean, it poses a potential violation, is what the concern is, right?
No, it poses a terms and conditions acceptance on each app developer. You can collect data. Right. You just have to ask permission.
Sure.
And as James made it very obvious in his article that he put up, is maybe the app developers aren't even GDPR compliant on their own, or right now, in whatever data they're logging. And I was set back 3 months this year because of GDPR. I've got projects that are going to deliver in April because of GDPR. I had to push stuff to the right. So. It hurt us. It hurt us bad on a dev timeline. So it's addressable, but it's just a matter of asking permission.
I mean, and the bigger question is, do we want this data? At the end of the day, do we want this kind of data? Does it help move the medium forward is the bigger discussion.
Well, as a stats junkie, I'd love to have the data, but I understand the ramifications of it.
Right.
But you think, if, media buyers, if you're listening, close your ears. Well, just be careful what you wish for.
Well, but Todd, isn't that concern a little bit off the table based on what we've seen in
with the Apple Podcast?
Apple Connect
it is. But no one's convinced, and he continues the story. Somebody, and I'm not going to mention her name, was like completely still bashing the download and server-side data and making these comments that just, infuriated me in the lack of knowledge and giddiness on RAD as a second coming. Well, it might be the second coming, but it's going to be 2 or 3 years before we have any meaningful data. Right. I believe that. Have you seen any app developers announce we're supporting RAD? Nope.
Not really. Mm-mm.
Well, RAD implementation on web players is going to be pretty easy. Maybe that's where we're going to get data.
I mean, it's going to start out small, which means it's not going to be a representative of the entire space. It's going to take more than 2 years, Todd, for this to get rolled out. So if there's any real comprehensive data coming out of anything like this. So and Mike says in chat, he says hobby podcasters, they could give a crap about RAD data. Well, I will contend no, because what RAD's really going to do is, along with the Apple Podcast data, it's going to tell you what your audience is doing in your show. If you have a segmented show, this show is not segmented. This show is just talk and we go. And when people get bored, they leave. Well, it's true. If we bore them, they leave, right? So it's segmented. Some shows are very segmented, and they like my Geek Central show, it's segmented. At least the first 15 minutes has multiple segments, and then it has the content, and it has an ending. And I can watch, at least in Apple Podcasts, I can see that those last 2 minutes of the show, people are punching out. Right.
But they're there the other, 58 minutes or whatever it is of the show that time. But those last 2 minutes, they're leaving in droves. So, you have to put teasers in the beginning to keep them to listen all the way to the end, or, whatever you're trying to do, you can use that RAD data to, but you can see that now in Apple Podcasts. You can see what's happening with your show.
Right. Yeah. It's not just about giving visibility to playback of downloaded files. That's part of it.
Because I would put RAD markers at every spot. I put RAD markers at intro. I would put RAD markers on, I'd put boom, boom, boom. There would be certain segments of RAD markers that would be in my show that I would tell when I hit transitions. Do people either scrub ahead and come in, or do they, what data am I getting? And if we're going to do the RAD protocol, it needs to be more robust. It needs to be more stuff in it.
Right.
But they have, they're trying to keep it simple. But if you're going to implement it, let's go for the full Monty, and let's get all of it.
Right. But if the best case scenario, Todd, is that we're only going to get a sample of this data because people aren't going to opt in,
builds a story. It
does build a story, and it does give you a snapshot of what's going on. It may not be 100% complete,
right?
But it does give you, just like what Podcast Connect is giving us from Apple. It's just a snapshot. It's like, I hate to use the analogy, but it's like a survey sample. That's kind of what you're doing there.
And I don't want to beat a dead horse here, because we've talked about this a lot, but I think, the crux of the story was the reporters were asking. But I have to admit, I thought when I saw that RAD press release come out a week and a half ago, I was like, because they knew the IAB stuff was coming on Thursday, which the IAB pushed until the following Tuesday, which may have helped divert some of the attention. But I thought they came out with their rad announcement on Tuesday. The IAB stuff was coming on Thursday. Was that just a little underhand slip to like, let's get that out there in the news and revigorate the news cycle so that the IAB stuff won't be as prominent? I don't know. I'm just like conspiracy theorist. So
I think it was tapping into heightened, kind of awareness of these type of metrics in the space. I mean, it definitely makes sense that they would have pushed it out at that time.
But here's the deal: for all of you, server-side data is the king. Download is the king. It will continue to be king for a long time coming.
The download's not going anywhere.
No.
Even though many would like it to go away, but I think it's one of those things that they don't really know what they're wishing for. Because if it were to go away, I don't think that they would like the impact of that. So
what was your? And we've been invited. Was it Rob? You or Rob? Rob Walsh was invited to do an interview with some Rob and me have been invited to do an interview on January 2nd. Was that you? It must be Rob Walsh. It's in response to that podcast that we heard where they were talking about stats.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I'm croaking on everyone here.
Okay.
I need a mute button. Never had one here. So it just, I think what it is we have, and because there's so many measurement platforms out there now, how many do you think there is? I don't even know. It's 20 at this point, stat systems out there.
Oh yeah. I mean, at least that many.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of new podcast hosting startup companies that are out there that's been popping up over the last year.
Yeah.
That are doing their own measurement too, and I don't know how some of these companies are going to be able to, actually get into this IAB thing.
Like I said, I think it'll be a stretch for some, but I've got the gateway to get them there if they want to work with us. That's the problem too. Is why would we work with Blueberry for stats? Because then we may lose customers to Blueberry, and I understand the dynamic.
Right.
So some will, some won't, but it's the opportunity's there if someone wants to work with us. My point of view is it's hard. We spend a lot of time in this stuff every week. I look at my manpower hours going to stats, and it's an active job for our devs.
Right.
Because, weirdness happens. We're dealing with a little iOS issue right now. And, there's some weirdness, it's just things pop up and the apps get an update and they do something weird. And you're like, well, and you have to go through and test and A/B and you got to figure out what's going on. And then when you figure it out, then you got to go back and rerun the log files to make adjustments. And meanwhile, podcasters say, how come this number's low? And you're like, well, we're looking at it. We're trying to figure it out. And then you ask Apple or someone in there, they don't want to say anything. So we have to, I guess, reverse engineer stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Todd, one of the other things that came up this week, and it's kind of, a lot of these things, unfortunately, that we talk about in this show are reoccurring themes. But one of the other ones that came up was kind of this, there's a new platform that's entered the U.S. market that's coming out of China, right?
Yep.
And so you have this.
Well, they're not the first.
No, I know. I realize that, but they are the unique one at this point, and claiming that they're coming out of China out of a $7 billion podcast market, and claiming that they're going to bring that to the U.S. and they're going to make a massive business here in the U.S., but they are using the term podcast, and it's like a kind of a reoccurring thing that happens. That this, it's almost like a confusion between what a podcast is and what paid content is, right? And I just want to, clarify a little bit, because there's this perception out there that podcasting is podcasting a reference to content, or is it a reference to a distribution medium? And I know this has been an ongoing question for a long time, but if we're going to is podcasting, Todd, and I'll just throw it out to you, is podcasting a form of content? And if it is, then how it's monetized, how it's distributed, how it's looked at from a revenue perspective is basically open, right? It can be whatever anybody wants. But if we look at podcasting as a very specific type of distribution medium, then that narrows it down, right?
Right.
So a market like what's happening in China, where people are buying educational content through proprietary platforms, that's not a podcast. It's not based on our open RSS, right? But if we view podcasting as just unique digital audio that's distributed however, right, then I guess we can include that as what a podcast is. But I don't know. What's your thoughts, Todd, on that?
Well, fundamentally, podcasting has always been the media delivered via an RSS feed, syndicated, not distributed, syndicated through through an enclosure in an RSS feed. Now, that can include premium podcasts that are delivered via an RSS feed through a subscription system. As long as there is a platform which you can subscribe to, that is either you're subscribing to a feed that is feeding you media.
Right.
Now, I guess, but I'm old school. I'm a purist. So this other company is saying that you can put your media. I'm assuming, I'm just guessing here because I haven't seen the full details of what you're referring to. But they're saying that put your content on this platform, monetize it, make people pay for it. People can come to our platform, subscribe to it, and get to it in an audible fashion. Is that what they're promoting?
Well, it isn't so much that of what they're doing here. It's just this this kind of convergence, right, of these two type of methods of monetizing and distributing audio content, right? And how do we want to look at this medium? So let's say we look at China, which is a very unique market for a lot of reasons, and say, okay, they built a $7 billion, now granted there's a lot more people there, but they built a $7 billion market for content, right? Is that possible in the US? Is that possible in Europe? Is that possible to build that scale of kind of, an economy, right, around this medium that doesn't exist today, right? We're maybe a couple $100 million industry right now.
No one's going to pay
for
the majority of content out there.
Yeah. But what this company is doing is they're coming to the US and they're taking more of a podcast model, right? Where they're offering free hosting, and they're offering to pay podcasters, like guaranteed money up front.
The $10,000 to $40,000 up front.
Right. And then offering all this, support and really, really high rev share percentages along with that, and just throwing money at the market, trying to capture audience really, really fast.
Rob, if they want to pay me $40,000 up front, write me a check for $40,000 today.
Right.
I'll put my Geek News Central show over there. They can distribute it and give me some support. Sure, write me a check $40,000, but I'm not going to be exclusive.
I mean, that might be great, Todd, but is that that's very destructive to this medium.
If they're stupid enough to write me a check for $40,000,
you're going to do it. Okay, but Todd, we're encouraging people to go down the path of greed versus building something that's sustainable.
Rob, this country was built on greed.
Okay, fair enough.
You know,
but I'm not gonna recommend that people go over and do that, right?
Well, what are you signing? You don't get something for nothing.
That's my whole point.
You know, if they're willing to give me $40,000, and
well, you better be a damn big show, right?
Well, I don't care. They're claiming they're going to give you $10,000 to $40,000, so give me $10,000 to $40,000 cash, and then and all I have to do is mention their app. I don't know. You got to think about it from most podcasters' standpoint. Someone comes around and says, "I'm going to give you, hey."
Well, and $100 CPMs too.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, you want to give me 40 grand? Most podcasters would say, "Yep." But
sign me up.
But $40,000 times, I think it's pretty expensive. You know, how do you scale that? You know,
you better have a lot of $40,000.
You know, that's a lot of money. So even just to monetize, if you think about it, just to monetize 1,000 shows, if I'm doing my high school math here, that's $40 million just to do 1,000 shows.
Hey, that's a drop in the bucket, Todd.
What they got? What they said they have $7 billion. That's how much money they've got.
Yeah. Well, that's based on what I've heard. Is that that's what they're claiming, right? That's what this company claims, that they've built, or they've been involved in building this huge market. But I believe that the Andreessen, an investment firm out of Silicon Valley, has come out and said it's really more like $3 billion. So there's some sort of inflation going on here. But
if they have $3 billion, they can buy the entire podcasting space.
I know. That's kind of my bigger point here.
They can come in.
What we've come to.
They can come in and say, "Todd, here is $50 million." And I'm like, sold. Well, you know, if someone comes with a big enough check, any business you build is built to sell, right?
Right.
If someone comes in and has a big fat checkbook, and again, I'm not going to.
This medium isn't really for sale.
I'm not going to throw the podcasters the curve, okay? But if someone comes and offers me a huge check and it has conditions that isn't going to affect our independent podcasters. Right. You know, I'm a businessman as well as a podcaster.
Right.
But, you know, I'm being really, a little bit over the top here, but with that kind of money, okay, so if they came and gave me $50 million, let's just, okay, let's say, what is there, 20 podcasting companies? 25?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so let's say they give us each $50 million. They probably couldn't buy mid-roll for 50. But, so, you know, let's just say, you know, round it to 50 million. You know, it's still, they got plenty of money left over, you know, plenty of money to spare. So when people start throwing those types of numbers, I'm just roll my eyes, and it's a big bullshit play is what it is. And people that obviously do not know the space, you know. But, you know, if someone's going to come, you know, it's like that guy that comes to Vegas and he walks up to the craps table and he's got a big wad, you know, of money. Of course, you don't know if he's really got money or if he's emptied his life savings out of his savings account to be there for the big roll, right? You just don't know.
Right. So anyway, that was something that popped up this week. It's been bubbling for a while now, but yeah. You know, do we want to include Audible as a podcasting platform? I guess at the end of the day, that's the question. You know, Audible's been bubbling around the podcasting space for I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
And it kind of begs the question, right? from an economic standpoint, how big of a market do we want to build? I don't personally think that people in the U.S. are going to be as inclined to buy content like they do in China.
No. And I don't think
why should they?
And I don't think the way this space has grown up, I don't think there's any way someone can come in and just buy the space. People are very resistant to that kind of activity. And they come in with some outlandish numbers. I'm like, we're going to give you 10 to 40K and we're going to give you 80% of ad revenue. Oh, hey.
I mean, it doesn't quite pass the sniff test, right? It doesn't really, it's just going to make most people just shake their head going, it's too good to believe, right?
Right. And if they do, we'll see it moving very, very quickly. With that type of money, there should be deals closing left and right.
You would think so.
Yep. Right? Yep. And there should be people flocking to that platform. Anybody else got anybody? I'd love to hear from you. If you've got one of these emails where this company's trying to buy audience and podcasters.
Right. And I guess at the end of the day, that's kind of what it is.
You can't make audience members. You can't force audience members to move to another platform. Whatever. Go ahead and try.
Yeah.
Because there's this company called Apple that may go swapped. I don't see it.
Yeah. So, hey, Todd, have you gotten your ticket to go to the iHeart Radio Podcast Awards?
The what?
The iHeart Radio Podcast Awards. Have you gotten your ticket?
No, I didn't get a ticket. I didn't get an invite. I didn't get a contact. You would think that the owner of the original Podcast Awards would have at least been given a gratis ticket and an invitation to come. You would have thought.
Yeah.
Did you get your ticket?
No.
Oh.
I can't go. I literally can't go. I would actually love to go.
Is anybody in the audience? Is anybody in the audience going? Or is it just
go because I have to set up my booth for PodCon the same day?
Oh, are any of you actually going to this iHeart event? Have you been, asked to attend and dress up in a tuxedo and watch them self-propagate shows within their own ecosphere? I'm being really. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Todd Bah Humbug.
Someone asked me the other day, what's your favorite movie? I said, right now, The Scrooge. No, actually. Just
the
kidding.
Grinch.
It's largely because what's going on with my house. I'm in the middle of a major reconstruction zone.
Right. I know. I've seen your posts on Facebook.
Yeah, my furniture's back in the house, and today I have to finish the bathroom. Vanity has got the backsplash and the water hooked up in the drain, and God forbidding anything else, I'll be finished by about 4:00 this afternoon.
Good.
And I'll smoke a stogie and drink a little bit of single malt out on the back porch as my kids are cleaning up the mess in the backyard.
Yeah, Todd, I really dislike kind of being negative about that whole iHeartRadio Podcast Awards.
Yeah, it's okay. They can do their thing. More promotion to the space is good. We tease them.
No, it is. No, it is. I mean, it's all good, and I would love to see that be a big success, and because I do think that it's going to raise awareness for the medium, but I guess we just don't necessarily like how it was deployed, and
So I want to talk about a subject that has been making the rounds a little bit.
Okay.
So remember when Apple kicked Alex Jones off, and I said, we all understood why they did that, but I said, that's, I'm a big advocate of free speech, whether I like it or not. And obviously he had done some stuff in his show that, invoked, violence or whatever the reason was. Long story short, he got bounced. Well, the folks over at Patreon are basically booting some of their some of their Patreon customers because of their content.
Right.
And I'm this when you start, and again, I don't know the content that they but it looked like anything that was ultra conservative got bounced. So it makes me wonder here, and I go back to something I have said since the beginning of this podcasting space. If you are beholden to a third party for revenue, and have no other, if you are dependent upon someone to that extent, where if they pull the plug on you and it puts you out of business, maybe it's time to relook your stack. In the podcasting space, there's plenty of hosting companies. People can leave me, go to you. They can go to one of a dozen different companies and host media. There's options. There has been no other options for Patreon to this point. There might be one other platform, but I still to this day do not understand why content creators do not put a PayPal link on their website. It's easy to set up subscription buttons. Run your own program. If you're big enough to get people to subscribe to your show, why give Patreon a cut? Yeah, they got some cool tools, but you can do that yourself. So I get real weird when companies start picking and choosing who they're going to do business with.
Yeah, it's happening all over the place, though, Todd. Especially with some of these shows that are kind of
okay. So if
they're violating terms of service,
okay,
that is clearly on those platforms.
If you are not invoking hate speech, threat, or violence, if you are, then you know what, they have every right to shut those shows down.
Well, that's exactly what these shows are being claimed as doing, right? Well, it's based on hate speech.
Okay, okay, so then they removed a whole bunch of shows. Then where are these shows on our platforms? What's the names of them? I'd like to go review them to see if they're actually, I would personally like to go review them, or listen to them. I shouldn't say review because I got to be careful there.
Right.
Listen to them, subscribe to them on my own as a person, as me, as Todd, not as a company. I just, I don't know. If they're saying hate speech, then fine. Or if they're threatening violence, then I'm all behind Patreon's decision here. But that is not the claim that's being made. That's not what's being said in the interwebs. It's just ultra conservative content.
Well, it's linked up with far right creators, right? But what Patreon is claiming is that these far right creators are purveyors of hate speech. Right?
Okay, purveyors but are they saying it? Are they actually? Sure. If they are, then I'm okay with Patreon's move.
Right. See, it just gets back to what these platforms put in their terms of service as what is perceived to be protecting their customers, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
Right? That's the idea behind it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a platform has a right to protect
itself. Sure. But if someone is not invoking hate speech, and I'm just saying this, if they're not, they should be allowed to say what they want to say.
Oh no, I agree with that. Sure. Right. And that line can be a little hard to get really clear too. I mean, I think a lot of platforms get criticized because they're not very specific about what was specifically said, right?
Last time I checked, Milo has not been accused of invoking hate speech. And he was one of the ones that was removed.
I think he has a history of doing that kind of stuff, though.
Well, he's been if he's actually said hate or violence, that's one thing. But, okay. I don't know this guy's, You would think he would be off YouTube if he was.
Well, some of these guys that Patreon's booting off are YouTubers.
Right. They're YouTubers. So YouTube's apparently okay with their content. So, okay. I'm thinking here that.
Right.
Here's my point. It's a very slippery slope. If someone is outright saying, I'm going to kill you, or we should do this to a certain class of people, invoking hate speech is obviously not cool.
Right.
But if you're just expressing opinion and not actually invoking hate speech, I think it's a thin line. I'm not defending these folks. I'm just saying from a free speech advocate, there's a fine line here.
Yeah. Well, it does look like there are people that are posting to Patreon has like a blog, I guess, and they post very specific things that were said on these shows.
So you like the exact context of what they said.
Right. It's actually quoted.
And if they've done that, then that's cool. If they've outlined exactly what they've gotten bounced for, that's fine. But here's the bigger picture. Okay, Patreon can do what they want to do. But my point is, if you're going to be a creator and creating content, control your brand, control your process, control the money that's coming into your show. And it's not to say that PayPal won't demonetize folks either, because they've done that, or canceled accounts, because that can happen too. But I don't know. I'm on this bandwagon of, protect your brand, protect your stuff.
Yeah.
And 99.9% of podcasts out there are never ever going to have an issue.
Right. No, agreed. Most don't. So Todd, one thing I want to talk to you about too is that this is the time of the year for 2019 predictions and 2018 retrospectives all over the place. Are you getting a lot of asks for contributions to that?
I have not. So I guess I'm on the outs.
Uh-oh.
And be honest with you, Rob, I've been so focused around this stuff with the IAB, I've had hardly time to breathe.
Right. But it does seem like there's lots of this stuff coming out right now talking about what people are seeing as the trend lines for 2019. And some of it is kind of, you kind of read through it and it's almost like it's an echo chamber, right? There's nobody really thinking that far out of the box. It's almost like people read what other people say and then they start parroting what other people say, and I don't know that we're getting a lot of original thinking going on here about what is potential in the next year and what is going to actually happen. So I don't know if we want to go down this rabbit hole at some point, maybe in our next episode or something like that, if we do want to talk about what we think is going to happen in the next year, or do you think it's even a relevant conversation?
Well, considering my travel schedule, let me look here. What is today's date? Today's the 22nd. I'm looking at the wrong year. Let me back up. So next week, this time, Rob, I'm going to be holding my first grandchild. So I will try to do a show remotely.
You know that for sure, right?
They're inducing her, so I can.
I tried to play that game last summer with my daughter too.
Right. Well, I
tried to time it on my air flight to fly down to get there just before she gave birth. And I missed it by 2 hours.
I've been asking her some medical questions involving dilation and she's having contractions and where we're at in this process, and baby is due anytime. So they're going to induce her on the 26th. So, but they said they may shift the inducement to the 28th. So if that's the case, then I'm going to be hot and heavy. So we'll plan on a show for the 29th. I'll sneak an hour in, but I think we can talk about it now because after that, I'm my schedule's screwed for a couple of weeks. But I think that we'll see what happens with certification. We'll see if media buyers actually do start clamping down on where they spend their money based upon certification. I doubt it. I've heard this rumor that they want to. I think they're going to continue to spend money no matter what, if depending on the platform. But I think it's a lot of questions are going to be asked of those platforms on where you're at, why you're not. I think it's going to be a big deal, especially for some of those that have been notoriously for being over reporters. I think the space is, as we continue to grow, I think there's going to be continued disruption. I think there's going to be people trying to push into the space and do disruptive things. So they're not disruptive, but trying to break the business model, the traditional business model.
Right.
And that just happens within any industry. It just makes us all work harder.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if you saw the article that came out from the Pacific Content folks. I don't know if you saw that.
I haven't read it yet.
The 13 predictions for podcasting in 2019. And the best and brightest of the podcasting industry look into their crystal ball to tell what to expect in the year ahead. And you know what the number one is?
Surprise me.
Podcasts go mainstream, finally. And the first actual quote from a significant other in the space is, I believe in 2019 is a time for hockey stick habit growth and the diversification of the audience and the offering.
Hockey stick.
Hockey stick. We all love hockey sticks.
Yeah, we know what the hockey stick looks like.
That's right.
On stats. You think it's going to do like this from a... Okay. Who said that? Who said that?
Should I say?
Sure.
Okay.
It's in the article.
The head of global studios for Spotify. Okay. All right. And the second one down, and I'll just read. Many of the 2 billion plus Android users worldwide would love listening to podcasts, but have yet to be introduced to them and aren't sure where to find them. As awareness and access to podcasting grows, we will see especially strong growth among Android users. Can you guess who that quote is from?
Nope.
Zach from Google Podcasts.
Hey, Zach, what are you guys doing? It's crickets over there.
Right.
If you're working on something, let's get busy.
Right.
Well, Blueberry customers don't have this problem of Android growth.
No, I mean, I think it's great that he's optimistic about the growth opportunity on Android.
No,
I'm just not sure what the path is there for them.
All I can say is, with or without Apple, our customers have been on a ever increasing global Android percentage share for at least 4 years, beyond what other people.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too on our platform. I mean, people are more and more listening on Android. And it just makes sense because, I think the number that I did some research on this weekend or this past week is like 73%, 73% of all mobile handsets in the world, guess what, are Android.
Of course. Yeah.
Right.
Because you can buy one for $50.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then about 24% are iOS on a global scale.
Yep.
But yet, podcast consumption on iOS is 5-1, 5 times greater than the 73% on Android.
So we're not at 5-1 though.
We're not.
Blueberry customers are not 5-1.
Where are you at?
If I look at just Blueberry customers, probably closer to.
Down in the fours.
We're close to fours.
Okay, well that's good. That's good. That's good. Good progress.
Yep. Not quite fours. I would say close to, very, very close to 4.
And then the next quote here is podcast ad revenue in the U.S. will surpass 700 million.
Okay.
In 2019.
I could see that.
Can you? Okay.
Yep.
That was a quote by Hernan Lopez of Wondery.
Because what do they think we're at this year? 500?
I haven't seen a firm number on that.
Yeah, it could go to 7. It's potential.
Okay. The next quote is, we will see continued consolidation in the space as companies compete for scale to attract brand advertisers.
We predicted this last year. It didn't happen. We predicted in 2018 consolidation. It didn't happen in 18.
Right. Do we think it's going to happen in 19? And guess who that quote's from? You can't. Tom Webster Edison.
Yeah, we thought. Well, we thought we were going to see consolidation, but I don't think so. I think there's a lot of independent platforms out there right now. There might be some of the smaller ones will be swallowed up.
And it's possible that this IAB certification could kind of push that.
Potentially.
Push that a little bit more.
It could.
Right. Says here, content, podcast formats, and host talent will trend more towards mainstream content tastes as the industry podcasting still does not create enough content to attract the type of audience that would sit down at 8 p.m. And watch NBC or CBS every night.
Oh, that comes from someone that's selling. That's got to be Wondery or somebody like that. That made that quote. No.
Stuart Last, COO of Audio Boom.
Everyone wants to sell a television show. Is that what that? I don't know.
I think he I can see his point. He's saying that the content needs to be more mainstream, but people don't realize that this medium is built on niche content.
But people don't listen to podcasts at 8 p.m. People listen to podcasts, at the gym, in the car, in transit. Right. No, there's very few people listening to shows at
8 p.m. Right.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's not a great analogy, but okay. And here's another one: formats that appeal to wider audiences, such as reality and game shows, will become commonplace.
No.
I think we've already moved in. I mean, all of podcasting mostly today is reality anyway. I mean, it's yeah.
But the thing is that they're talking about a reality show. Is that what they're talking about?
I think that's kind of, because it says reality and game shows, right?
Okay, I don't know. How do you do a podcast with a game show? Live streaming, you could do a game show. But...
Well, I mean, National Public Radio has some game show type podcasts out there.
I don't listen to any NPR content.
Right.
So
right, and that was a quote from Corey Layton from Wooshka.
Okay.
So, and then let's see here. Anybody else? Let's see here.
Mike Dell says SoundCloud and FeedBurner will die in 2019. Let's see here.
Is that wishful thinking, or is that something?
No, that's his prediction. How about it, chat room? Let's hear your predictions. We heard the predictions from the notables. Let's hear yours. Go ahead and lay it in there. If you're on YouTube, I'll look at that too.
And Todd, the rise of short form podcasts on smart speakers.
Okay, slow and steady on that.
Okay, Right. Slow and steady, which means very little. Competition is going to heat up for Apple. Did you know that?
Well, it already is.
I know.
It already is. It's, it's been trending that way for a couple of years.
Right.
Oh, John Wilkers, John in YouTube says Anchor will go bankrupt. I think, John, that their runway is longer than that.
Right.
I think unless they get another funding round now, we'll see what happens in mid-20.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because I think their runway is longer than 19.
Right. I would think so too.
Yeah. I think they've got enough cash, and they'll probably get another round, so they'll make it to maybe 21, 22.
So I'm scrolling through this list. It says, and number 4 on this list of topics of big trends is, will you pay for podcasts in 2019? Which is what we were just talking about, right? Let's see, we've got the exact quotes are, it says, more shows will be created solely for driving subscriptions or other paid content.
A small segment of shows. A small segment of shows will. Here's where the private content is. We've got tons. I get 10 a week. Private companies wanting to do private podcasting. So that's where private podcasting is right now, not for podcasters. I get 10, 20 a week people contacting us saying, hey, can you do private podcasting? Can you set us up for private podcasting? So corporates are taking huge advantage of private podcasting.
Well, I guess my question is, how long is it going to be before we start to see premium subscription podcasts on places like Apple? Do you think Apple is ever going to support that?
It'd be cool if they did.
I think it would be interesting too, because then it would still be RSS based. Because most of the paid content now isn't necessarily RSS based, right? You can't get it through a regular podcast feed, which would be, I think potentially open it up to a greater opportunity, because right now paid content is usually done through proprietary platforms, right? That isn't based on RSS. So, and I think it's possible. It's just nobody's deployed anything at scale to see if it's if it would work. Right.
So a couple of comments from the chat room. Google Podcast is going to pass Apple at some point. Well, that's not a 2019. That's a
2020 question.
Or 21, 22, 23, 24,
23, 24, 25. Yeah, right.
And then someone else
the pace that they're on right now, right?
Yeah. And then someone else says, I'm waiting for Apple to ban Anchor podcasts because of the mess they've made with listings. Well, Apple's got to figure that out on their own.
Yeah, that's a complicated question. I've had conversations with Apple about that topic. Yeah. They say that they're going to make changes to that situation. But
Eileen says Apple podcast listings were a mess long before Anchor came on the scene. Not really, because you had to have a show in the can. You had to know how to get it in there. You look at Daniel's data. Anchor's contributed 50,000, 60,000 shows to there that are, dead. So.
Right. They're picking up a lot of new shows, but there's not a lot of content there, though.
Right. They pick up. The key is they're picking up a lot of shows that have nothing in them.
Right.
1, 2, 3 episodes. That's it.
And that's what Free does. Free picks up,
right.
a lot of tire kickers, but not a lot of serious.
So, they're a contender out there. So we'll just have to continue to watch. And they've done some things, and that's a prediction is that. Well, here's a prediction. Podcast hosts are going to be looking at their UIs and making it easier for podcasters to podcast on their platforms.
There is a corollary benefit to this, right?
Sure.
Which is how the rest of us, adapt to clarity on what podcasters want.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. No doubt.
Right. So one of the other predictions that is in this list, and I'm sticking pretty high level here, but Hollywood adaptations abound.
Well, I hope they do. The more podcasts that get signed for adaptation, the bigger this. It's just going to help the space.
Right.
More money, storytelling stuff. But I think we're
like what we had on with
KC last week. Yeah,
KC last week is a perfect example of it. It's a podcast starting and then becoming other medium is it's been going on for years. There's really nothing new about any of this, really. I guess what's new is the success of the model.
And having seen, and Rob, you and I have, and some of these players that made these comments have been in the space long enough now that I thought their answers would have been a little more detailed. But, after having lived this from the beginning, like you have, it's slow and steady. I think Rob Walsh would say the same thing, slow and steady.
Well, I mean, a lot of the folks that they got to post comments in this article have not been around the medium very long.
But they should be around long enough to have obtained some.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, some have been around since the beginning, but
so Eileen says, I remember hearing about really old pod-faded shows showing up in search results on iTunes since 2009. Of course, if their show is still up, Apple does not take them down. If they have the media and the feed still online, they don't remove them, and they're slow to remove shows that are pod-faded. But if a feed goes down, they're pretty quick in taking those down. I've seen feeds go down and shows be removed within 90 days of a feed going offline. So from that perspective, they're like a library. They don't want to take stuff down.
Right.
So I can understand the thought process there. If they took every pod-faded show down, the Apple Podcast Directory would shrink to 150,000 shows.
Right, that's true. Yeah, because I believe we're up well over 619 total feeds, or 619,000 total feeds. I think is what we. I mean, is there an updated number, Todd, that you have on?
I'm going to bring our number up. Wrong screen.
So the other major prediction here that's coming out of this article is the experimentation in the industry pushes the edges of the medium, which I'm not really sure what that means.
Say that again.
So experimentation pushes the medium. So
I think we've been all experimenting for a while. Our number is
about 15 years.
Yeah, our number's higher than Apple, and it always has been. 600. We have 658,126 shows in our directory. There's probably some dupes in there, but
658.
126 as of today.
Do you have a growth rate on a monthly basis tracked?
I don't have that handy, but Daniel was saying that they were seeing 3,000 to 4,000 new shows a week coming into Apple.
Okay.
Recently. So again, a lot of one episode shows. Saying it nicely.
Right. Right. Or less than 6 or so?
Or less than 3 often. Yeah.
Yeah, less than 3. Yeah. So, and the next prediction listed here is specialization and niches. So it talks about boutique production houses. That sounds like mainstream content, right? There's new companies forming that are going to focus on boutique productions. It's going to be focused on high quality fictional storytelling. That's what I'm hearing in the medium right now. It could be stories for children, stories for adults, at all levels. I think a lot of the other bigger media companies are going to start creating original productions more and more, not just repurposing their existing broadcast content, which is what most of them have done over the last 15 years. I think we're going to see a lot more original content coming out of these larger media companies. And Todd, you could make the assertion that that's a little bit of a threat to the indie podcast market.
Nah, so, it's not a threat. It's just going to be an addition to the indie market's safe. The indie market doesn't care about 90% of this stuff. So the indie market is creating content for them, their fans, with their buddy or girlfriend. It's the indie market is. These big publishing houses are going to do the cool things that they're going to do, and we're going to have some big name splash shows, which helps us all continue to raise the awareness of the medium. I'm not worried in the least of the indie folks are fine.
Well, I think one thing that it does do, to be quite honest, is it does push the bar up. I mean, if these bigger media companies get it, right, and they start producing original content that dominates the charts, as may be the case, it does put a lot more pressure on indie producers to compete with that, right? So to keep audiences, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does put a lot more heat on the indie producers to, essentially pull a rabbit out of their hat, right? So that's the part that worries me a little bit.
Well,
as we look to the future,
I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to see, but I think I know my bread is buttered, and we're going to be worried. We're going to take care of the indies first, as well as serving our enterprise clients. But this is an indie medium, so they can only produce so many shows. If we're going to get to $700 million in advertising, we're going to need some big shows out there.
Well, I think if the evolution of this is original for podcast content, right, not just repurposed major media content, right, which has been going on for a while. If that's the direction that this is going, then in some ways you could make the case that the playing field is getting more, leveled, right, to some degree. It is going to put more pressure on people to up their games when it comes to production of quality indie content, right? But I do worry a little bit about this high-end fictional storytelling being something that's beyond most podcasters to be able to do, and it's one thing that I'm focused on this next year is trying to come up with some educational programs that can help indie podcasters be able to learn how to produce these storytelling programs in a way that's affordable and in a way that's understandable. Because I know I was up in Vancouver at the Vancouver Podcast Festival, and there was a lot of sessions that were being taught by pretty major storytellers out of the CBC that were producing very high-end kind of more reality-based, newsy, journalistic storytelling podcasts. But when they got up on stage to teach people, this is their process, this is how they do it, was very intimidating to the audience of typical indie producers, right? It was like, I don't know that I have the skills or the talent or the equipment to be able to compete with this, right? Especially when you look at the international markets, where these kind of government-funded kind of media like the CBC is so dominant, right? And you look at the BBC, and they kind of dominate the media landscape in those countries, and it's really caused people in those countries to kind of shy away from being indie content creators because of the dominance of these companies and being so significant in those countries, right? And I think as we look at the international expansion, which is number 9 here on this predictions list, and I know Voxnest came out with a report this past week about the podcast universe and looking at this medium from a global perspective, that it is growing in other countries around the world faster than it's growing in the U.S. right now.
Well, they're catching up, Rob.
Well, no, exactly. Right. It's,
but going back
I
to
mean, it looks better when you're starting from a lower base, right? It grows faster. It'll slow down, but
going back to your point about content creators and storytellers and being intimidated, I think really if you think about, okay, let's go back, or I'm going to go back to day one when I went to Walmart and bought my $12.95 LabTech headset,
right,
and recorded my first show. I had never created any content, and to me, it was I've often said I was a blogger, but a poor blogger, and that's why I pay people to blog today, because just better for someone else to do it. And I'm probably a poor podcaster too, but here's the if you look at what I did in episode 1 and where we are right now, it's just like light years ahead. But if someone is new, you have to do the time. You have to get down in the trenches, and this is where I think it's exciting for a lot of people that are deciding that they want to create content, because this space allows them the opportunity to do so in an experimental way, put something out, learn their trade, learn their voice, learn the process. And it'll help them morph into what they're going to do with their career. So I think from a independent if I was an 18, 19-year-old and I'm a storyteller, I'm a very creative person, I would think that this medium would be where I would want to cut my teeth at, and and kind of figure it out as you go. And so what, the audience is small to begin with, but it's one of those things that's what's the beauty of this space is we don't have to ask anyone permission. We don't have to sign no licenses. Screw the man, right? This is podcasting. So the big companies can continue to come in. And I think if we this is what we should do next year. We should reassure, and we should retell the stories of how this space got started and why it's important to have independent content creators come in and create media. Because look at the careers that have been created from people that started just like you and I did, strapped on a mic, told a story, and where that led them to. Even if someone is just doing a show on their own and they're not reaching a big audience, there's a whole bunch of satisfaction from that in just itself. So the big corporations, in my opinion, they can do what they want to do. They can make the noise they want to make. But I really think that the independent podcasting space is alive. It's healthy. There's opportunities for new people. And if nothing else, just learning the trade of what they're trying to do is, to me, is because 20 years ago, we couldn't do this.
Right.
They can now. And yeah, it takes some investment, but if you've got a small group of people pitch in some money together, you can buy the gear and the mics and stuff necessary to get started. Or, you really can do it if you each just record into your own laptop and do one-enders or whatever they call those. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Right. And what role do we have as platforms in enabling the success of indie podcasters? That's the question that I've been thinking about a lot, and I've been actually posing that question to the team at Voxnest and Spreaker too. I mean, Todd, we've talked about this. I've mentioned this, and I know you've made a comment that you're not feeling it as much. But I talk to a lot of podcasters that are looking for help. They're looking for, a leg up, or some tips or some pathways to get support to grow their audience. Right? They feel that they're not growing fast enough, and I think that's an indication really of where this whole conversation comes from, around people complaining about podcast discovery, right? Is that I think that's code for them saying, I don't feel like I'm growing my show fast enough.
But I think if you can do a case study in each and every individual show, you can go a deep dive and look at what are you doing? Right. Are they spending, when I tell people that I invested 30 to 40 hours a week promoting my show in the first 2 to 3 years I was doing that, people look at me like, you're kidding.
Right.
But, I took it, well, I had I know where I needed to be from point A to point B. So oftentimes, we can look at every individual podcaster out there has growth issues, and we can probably break it down into, is the content compelling? What are you doing to promote? You've got all these social opportunities. Are you going out into your community? Are you going to events where your community is? There's just if you want a show to grow, there's more you have to do than just talking into the microphone. Why am I going to CES? Why am I spending $15,000 to $20,000 to go to CES, put on a live show, do 100 different interviews with 5 different podcasters? Because I have to go get content that my audience is going to want to consume, listen, watch, that's going to help bring in new listeners, that's going to feed the machine to keep the show growing, keep my sponsor happy. That's all a big part of this whole thing is, I spent 2 years trying to tell podcasters, what are you doing besides doing your show? Are you kind of contemplating a book? Are you reaching out to local media? Are you going to a radio station? Are you going to telling a television station? My 1-year anniversary of my show is up. They love to come do these like little one-off stories. You get 2 minutes of airtime. They're in your house for 30 minutes. They shoot you in the studio, talk about your show, but you get 2 minutes of air. Are podcasters doing that? Are they reaching out? I was, if I thought there was a media opportunity, if I was someplace and I saw a guy who was a reporter, I was like, hey, I want to tell you about my podcast. And I had television people come here. It's all about, you just can't just do this. You can't just talk.
Right.
So maybe our job, Rob, is to continue to tell people you've got to do more to build your show besides content.
And what that more is, I think is the key. I think we need to be purveyors of, information about what that is, right? What are those things that actually work? Those are not easy questions to answer, though. And they're not show,
and they're not easy if you don't have the time or the budget to do it, too.
Right.
But I sacrificed. I sacrificed all of my family vacation, all of it. Right. We didn't have family vacations for like 5 years. I sacrificed it all to build the show.
Todd, do you think it was easier back then to build an audience than it is now?
There was no social media. We had no Twitter. We didn't have Facebook. We had none of this.
But a lot less competition, though, right?
No, there was still plenty of shows. The space grew extraordinarily fast. There was plenty of shows.
There were a lot of shows.
Yeah, plenty.
Especially in our genre, which was
right. Tech. It was slammed.
Right.
So sure, it wasn't as big as it is today, but we didn't have. So when someone says I can't grow my show, I'm just like, it's your fault. Get out there and grind.
Right. And then the last couple of
some people just get mad at me, but I'm sorry, and what are you willing to sacrifice to make your show grow?
It's a hard truth, right?
It is.
Yeah. It's tough. The last couple of predictions in this article, which I think are linked, but they treat them differently, is AI and podcast discovery. So when I say AI, I'm talking about artificial intelligence.
Uh-huh.
So you've got Zach from Google Podcast chiming in on this one. He goes, as AI systems understand podcasts at a deeper level, people will be able to discover and listen to a wider variety of podcasts, including specific episodes of interest, even from shows that might not otherwise be subscribed to. So he's thinking that transcribing and getting a deeper understanding of what the content is at a deeper level, and then being able to somehow recommend or refer or map to based on interests, right, is somehow going to magically solve the podcast discovery problem that I don't think you and I really think exists today.
Does he know? Does he know something we don't?
I think he's thinking technology is going to provide a solution to the podcast discovery myth that's out there.
So last time I checked, we haven't had anything yet past the Turing test. So,
right.
So what AI really is at this point is a human machinable programming language that has been put in by a human, which has its own biases and conceptual ideas. So the code of AI is only as good as what a human is possible to put in.
Well, AI and machine learning are very much the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. So the concept behind artificial intelligence is the ability for a computer to take information that it's learned, right,
link it
from you, right, and map it to areas of patterns of your interests that it sees in your usage patterns, right?
Right.
So that's the concept behind it here, and somehow that's going to solve this problem. So just to give an example, you and I are very much involved in the podcasting space. So what we would be able to get access to somehow, I don't think we know what the interface looks like for this, is a regular recommendations list for shows that are talking about podcasting, right? And I guess it depends on how deep that level of understanding that AI systems have of my specific interests in podcasting. It would map to segments of audio that would be included in a variety of different shows, right? That's the idea behind what he's proposing here.
Oh.
And the question that I have is, that's not history has proven that is not necessarily a way that people like to discover content in podcasting.
Well, call me doubtful, and when they deliver a AI that has a human programmable algorithm that tells me or suggests content to me, I will be all in it.
Right. I think that the concept, and this raises a lot of rights issues too, is that at some point these AI systems may grab audio segments and piece them together into one episode of your, that's customized to you, right? It'll be mashed together into kind of like one episode of something that will have everything that you're interested in.
In 2019, that's not happening.
No, it's not. And do I really want that? And how is attribution given to podcasts, given that potential use situation? Is that podcast going to be able to monetize segmented audio that's delivered to audiences?
Yep.
Those are not issues that we've addressed yet.
No. Hey, I want to get on one other topic here.
Right.
There was an article. There was an article over on Podcast Business Journal talking about non-disclosure agreements.
Non-disclosure agreements.
So it says there's a new player in the market providing another outlet to allow podcasters to connect with listeners. Most exciting podcast players: Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, etc. will all accept your show with minimal or standard disclosures. Who reads all that fine print stuff anyway, other than us attorneys? What happens, however, when you're asked to sign a NDA, non-disclosure agreement? So who's being required to sign an NDA to be on a new player? There's a new player requiring NDAs?
Maybe it's a stealth startup. That would be the only thing that I could think of, right?
Why would you need to sign an NDA to have your content syndicated onto a platform? So, he goes on to say he's a lawyer, and he says, before we get there, however, I need to provide the standard attorney disclaimer. If you're asked to sign an agreement related to your podcast, please have it reviewed by a local attorney. Intellectual property laws and contract laws can vary state to state. So advice I may give a client in Florida will be different to advice you may get if you live in another state. So,
so where are you finding this?
This is on Podcast Business Journal. It's an article that's linked. They don't refer to who that player is.
Well, because they're under NDA, right?
Well, he's not under NDA. He's a lawyer, but maybe he isn't. Maybe he got an NDA and he can't say where he got the NDA. I don't know, but I wish he would have said who the player was. But here's something that's interesting about this. He says, why might an NDA be used in the podcasting community? He says, that's a question I've been asking myself since I've heard about the use of an NDA by this new player. He says he heard about it, so maybe he hasn't read it. One logical explanation may relate to the use of metrics, a download, subscribers, sponsorship. In that context, the NDA may prevent a podcaster from describing these metrics to promote their show, saying, I get X downloads and such on such and such player. It's interesting that he says player. Regardless, before you sign an NDA, please ensure you read it and understand it. If you need help understanding, please reach out again. So, and I'm very hesitant to sign NDAs. There's certain things you have to sign an NDA for, and to get pre-access to a site or insider knowledge on how a relationship, there's different reasons for, and you and I are both under varying NDAs with different groups. So, but it's very odd that any podcasters listening having to sign NDAs that, you probably can't go on the record and say you signed the NDA, can you? Can you say you signed an NDA with someone publicly? That's probably not an NDA. You have to read the NDA, make sure you can talk about the NDA.
I think it depends on the NDA.
Yeah, I think so too. If you can say, I signed an NDA with X, but you don't talk about the NDA.
Well, if the purpose of the NDA is to protect what that company or who that company is because they're in stealth mode,
right? Then you can't.
Then you can't.
But if they're not in stealth mode and you're having to sign an NDA, well, then why would anybody need an NDA if they're not in stealth mode?
Right. I mean, it's like you can probably say that, I signed an NDA this week, but you can't say who you did, right, with, right? So, right. But that's not going to help anybody. So I guess the bigger question is
John.
Go ahead.
John in YouTube chat says it's Pandora.
Oh. Well, yeah. We all have ourselves under NDA with Pandora.
So Pandora is making podcasters sign NDAs.
Yeah, and I don't believe that Pandora said that we can't say that we signed on an NDA.
Right, I've said we've signed an NDA with Pandora.
Right.
So Pandora's making podcasters sign in. That's a little weird.
Some businesses, this is kind of a standard business practice.
How do you scale that?
Well,
how do you scale that to tens of thousands of podcasts?
I don't think you can unless you automate it. I suppose you can. Mm-hmm. There are platforms that allow you to automate digital signings.
Huh. Well,
I don't know, necessarily why you necessarily would, unless you're trying to protect,
It's to me
something.
That it's really makes me go,
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else getting an NDA from Pandora? Did you ask them why you have to sign an NDA? As a podcaster, I understand companies. That's a given. But individual podcasters? why is it necessary? Why can't there just be a terms of service agreement, which is more standard?
Well, I think it's safe to say that Pandora is going to be a unique experience for the podcasting space. That's all I'll say, though.
Well, okay. I'm going to be in DC. I'm going to have to go see him again at some point in February, probably.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So, is there anything else that? I know we're going a little long today.
Yeah, it's okay. Here's the dealio. So after next weekend, I'll do my best to squeeze a show out. It's going to be rough for me to be able to do a show. I don't think I'll be able to do one the 5th or the 12th. So we might be off for 2 weeks. Just because of my being in Vegas, and the 5th I'm setting up, getting the live studio ready. And then the 12th, I'm actually airborne. So maybe we can figure out something around this.
Something like on Sunday or something, or live on Spreaker or something?
Yeah, we'll have to do something. We'll work the schedule to figure it out. It might be an off, but I'm home less than 24 hours, Rob, and I turn around and leave to go to the East Coast. So I'll be available on those weekends following that, but I'm going to be in hotels. So really, through February 16th, we're going to be audio only from here on out. And no video until, because I'm going to be, my airline ticket doesn't bring me home to the 16th of February. So we'll be audio only for about a month, which is okay.
Well, the 19th of January is PodCon.
Oh, so that totally screws you for that weekend. So yeah, we'll have to try to do something in between. And maybe we can, because I'm going to be on your time zone on Saturday the 5th. I'll be in Vegas. So maybe we can knock a show out on the 5th. Yeah,
you're going to be at CES on the 5th, right?
Well, I fly in Friday night, and then I go right to work on the morning of the 5th. But again, the 12th, 13th is kind of, I might be able, the 12th and 13th. See, it's just those 2 weekends. Well, we'll figure it out. We'll try to get a show in someplace somehow, because there's going to be too much going on to be gone that long.
I mean, we could possibly do it during the week or something.
Yeah, potentially. And if nothing else, we'll get our schedules synced up. But the whole, really, from the 5th to the 12th, I'm a crushed bug. It's I do my best to keep up with email. That's
right.
It's bad enough just keeping up with email that time frame, but we should be able to do a show on the 5th. Let's plan on doing one on the 5th for sure, and then see what is, and then I'll try to do squeeze an hour out on the 29th. I'll let you know how things are going midweek.
Okay.
So
on Saturday the 29th?
Yeah, I'll let you know what's going on with baby situation. So don't you guys love it how we just kind of do the planning meeting right here?
Right on the live show. Well, if you're a regular listener to this show, it impacts you too.
That's right.
Yeah. So we might as well talk about it openly.
Yeah. So anyway, everyone, thanks so much for being here. We definitely appreciate everyone's commentary. And thank you for all the live comments today. It was great. Rick, Mike, who else was in here? Mark was in here. Bob, John, Eileen. Those of you that can, if I miss someone, Beauty Bubble, whoever that might be, Dave Spit Life. Thanks, folks, for hanging with us here today on the live show. But hey, and also we got a donation, $10 donation, Rob. So I don't have the name in front of me, but
well, and I think we got an email with somebody asking that they wanted to sponsor our show.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I thought you got copied on that email. I think you did.
have missed it. You'll have to re-forward it to me. Who was it?
Okay.
Anybody of import?
I have to go back and look. Hang on there.
Oh, I must have. Wow. Wants to sponsor this show.
Yeah.
Get your checkbook out.
Oh, wait a minute here.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Or was it someone that just wants to post on newmediashow.com? I get a lot of those. Hey, can we post on newmediashow.com? I say, yep, 3,000.
It looked like it was a kind of like a newer podcast company that was wanting to get some exposure.
Oh, okay. Well, we're happy to give exposure if you want to buy some advertising too, or if you want to come on the show. I don't know if we should be actually charging a podcast hosting company for advertising. They just come on the show and tell us about themselves.
Well, I don't think they're a hosting company. I think they're providing some other corollary services.
All right.
To the medium,
well,
which there are many of those starting to pop up too, whether it be, I don't know that we've talked about the company called Chartable, but they're actually aggregating podcast metrics.
Yeah, that's a whole discussion itself.
Right.
So, we'll send that back over to me, Rob, and we'll take a look at it. But we haven't really contemplated doing sponsorship on the show because we really kind of, just be forewarned, we're equal opportunity bashers. So
right. Well, yeah. I sometimes feel a little uncomfortable with that role in the medium, though. But it's definitely something. It's brutal honesty, right?
And we always are. If we're talking about someone, we're always welcome them. They can come on and give their opinion too. We're open to having people come on and be guests and telling us how we're wrong. True. If we're wrong, we're wrong. We're just human. So
that actually doesn't happen very often.
No, people don't want to come on and defend at all. So maybe they just don't want to listen. Who knows? All right. We are way long. Everyone, thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Todd at blueberry.com or at Geek News on Twitter. My Roomba just started in the background, so it's a good time to quit. Rob, how about you?
Rob at voxnest.com. If you want to use that email address, I have way too many email addresses. And robgreenlee.com. Oh, go ahead, Todd.
I'm sorry for stepping on you.
No, it's okay. Squash me all you want.
Yeah. So it's at Rob Greenlee, Rob at Spreaker.com. So and
I have another show that I do called Spreaker Live Show at SpreakerLiveShow.com.
There you go. And talking over the Roomba here. Everyone have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, or if you don't celebrate, enjoy time with the family on your off time, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and, have a terrific holiday. Yeah.
So I tell my audience this as well. We've got this great thing called Uber and Lyft now. And if you're in an area that's supported by it and you're out having a little holiday cheer, please use Uber or Lyft to get home. We want you back with us after the holidays, safe and sound. And if you're driving, please be careful out there. But anyway, we'll be back with you hopefully next week, maybe me with baby in hand, to celebrate that. And of course, the coming new year. Everyone, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Okay. Take care, everybody.
Aloha. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.